Oof, pardon me. We gonna do this with the Bonaruski on because I'm a little under the weather right now, I'm not gonna lie. But I had to get this video out regardless. Real review, re-review. I'm not about to not make a video on this movie because when I tell you, well, first of all, we're talking about Gladiator 2 that released November 22nd, 2024, directed by the great Ridley Scott. Now, this movie absolutely blew my expectations out of the water. I was already hyped for it. My friends hated me for like 8-9 months because I didn't shut up about this movie, but it's everything that I hoped it would be. So before we carry on in this video, of course, I'm gonna throw a huge spoiler alert right now. If you had not watched Gladiator 2 in its entirety and you don't want to be spoiled, I urge you to click off this video and watch the movie and then come back. If you don't care, we'll welcome you anyway. I'm gonna talk about as many strong points as I can. I truly don't believe there's anything I consider to be a weak point in this movie, but that's just me and it's my opinion. Oh, actually, just real quick, there's no studio credits in the intro here, which I think is huge. Some movies you can't go without watching or sitting through 6-7 producer credits or studio credits in the first 5 minutes of the film. So that's gigantic to me. I love that. They straight up just throw us into the story. It's another strong point, actually. It's quite a decent intro into the film. Now we do start off 16 years after the death of Maximus and Marcus Aurelius. We do start up with some decent action. It seems to be a Roman attack on some type of African tribe, some tribe in an African country. I can't remember exactly what it was. The main character, who I believe, now don't be mad at me if I mispronounce this, I believe he goes by Mahona. It wasn't too clear on how they pronounce the name, so I apologize if I get that wrong. Oh, Mahona being played by Paul Mescal, who, oof, let me tell you, I'm not gonna get into that right now. Now we do meet him, and we actually are seen with his wife, who I believe is named Arashat. Now these two are two soldiers, Arashat being one of the archers, Mahona being one of the foot soldiers. Now Mahona does seem to be in some form of command over these people. You know, he just radiates that feeling of authority, and off the rip you can tell he's quite respected in their troops. Another strong point I'm gonna give this movie for being a movie in 2024 is how seamless the CGI they do use is. When I tell you can't tell that there's really CGI unless you look, like you gotta look hard. The Roman ships completely CGI. The water CGI, there's no way they shot this in an actual like water set. They might have shot a little bit in an actual water set, but for the battle itself, you know how in the first movie we see the first battle, it's in a forest. That's an attainable set, right? We're on the ocean in this movie. There's no way they could have been able to pull that off. There's too many things that could go wrong, or it's too unpredictable, I should say. So it's such a good blend of practical and special effects, so love that off rip. Now here we are introduced into Pedro Pascal's character, General Marcus Acacius, and you will notice that he does have the same name as Marcus Aurelius, the emperor from the first movie. I will say this real quick about Pedro's character. The way he's introduced to us, he's like a false Maximus, because he's also a general, but how they frame him, it's like he's the bad guy, given that we are watching through the perspective of Mahona, who is living in the city that he has just attacked. Another strong point we're going to give the movie here, I think the sound design was fantastic. The score is good as well. The score is not as memorable, but where it falls there, the sound design of the movie picks up. The first battle alone, we hear every part of the battle itself. It's very immersive, and it just pulls you into the movie, and I love that for films, especially historical films. Oh my word. Another strong point we're going to give this movie for its authenticity here is we actually get to see how brutal the battle actually is. So that's a strong point for how authentic the movie feels. We're watching, you know, men run around on fire. They're pierced by arrows. We're seeing them get hacked down by soldiers and stuff like that. Just all around the battle, the combat is just a great thing about this film. If you like good battles and good fight scenes, you come to the right place here. In general, the combat was great. The combat was great. The swordplay was fantastic. The choreography was great. It's another thing that if you watch my reaction to the original movie a couple days ago, what I mentioned is that with the huge sets really Scott's working with, how do you organize the choreography here when it's like 200, 300 people? He did it again. It's like there's so many people on set at once, and they're all like moving together as like one unit, and it works. It looks so well done. It looks real, and it's like these are actually people actually fighting. You know, no one's just standing around waiting for people to tell them what to do and stuff. Hats off to Ridley Scott. I've always loved that man as a director, but he took the cake with this one. Now, the main character, again, his name Mahona, I believe. He has this leadership or / authority like field of energy around him. He radiates that. You can tell that he truly is like in command here, right? Also, you can tell he really hates Romans. Like, he hates the Romans. When they finally dock, he couldn't wait to get his hands on them. He was just he was damn near foaming at the mouth. I'm gonna talk about why he's not my favorite character in a moment, but off rip, he up there. Just to get a little bit more into the story here, as the battle rages on, Acacius, he's forced his way into the middle of the city after he's docked. They're trying to capture this for Rome. Mahona's wife, again Arshot, is seen firing arrows into the Romans from a high tower. Acacius notices her, and he orders the Roman archers to take aim, and unfortunately Mahona's wife is struck down by an arrow and she falls into the ocean off the wall. Mahona unfortunately does see this at the time, and him being distracted, he's fighting on the wall as well. He is also then knocked into the ocean. Now this does go into the next strong point I'm gonna give this movie. Now in sequels we see a lot of repeated tropes in where they try to mimic the same thing that we saw in the first movie that we enjoyed from the first movie, but the thing is that happens most of the time is basically you've copy and pasted, right? This film, what I like that they did a lot is we get some decent nods to the original movie, but they give us like a significant spin, or it makes sense as to why we're seeing these patterns, right? So we do get some callbacks. The first callback I'm gonna give here, well, we get a mirrored scene to the fields from the end of the original where Maximus died and he passed on into the afterlife. Now Mahona, he is on a black and white beach. Instead of it just being Mahona there, we also see his wife Arshot on the beach, but she is being pulled onto a boat by a black figure who we are, I believe, to interpret as Death incarnate, since we had just seen her die moments ago. Of course, Mahona, not wanting to watch his wife leave or pass on, I should say, he's quite emotional, of course, in this dreamscape type place, right? Great emotion on Mahona. I'm not gonna talk too much about the acting just yet. I want to give us some more of a premise here. He regains consciousness in the ocean, and he finds his wife's floating body in the ocean and swims to her. Now, him holding her body with the arrow still sticking out of her chest, mind you. We see that on the beach, the battle is actually over. The Romans, of course, being victorious, and they're taking prisoners. We get such great shots in this film. The camera work, I think, is phenomenal. I know it's a sequel, but it truly looks like these movies were shot at the same exact time, if not right after the other, if that makes sense. Given that they're 24 years apart, I feel like you would get such a significant difference in how technology has improved, in how acting's improved, of course, directing in of itself. Everything moves forward. That's progression, right? Ridley Scott directed these two movies as if they are like back to back. The next scene, we are actually back in Rome. We are introduced to the twin emperors, Geta and Caracalla. These two emperors, they're odd. You can tell like they truly have no regards for the people of Rome, and they're just obsessed with their power. Now when they do meet with Acacius in like the public setting, of course they greet him in open arms, welcoming him back home, praising him for his victories. When they're behind closed doors, you can tell that there's a shift here, right? It's like something clicks in their minds, and they actually start accosting Acacius because they still don't have Persia and they still don't have India, and they're even threatening him just moments after giving him praise for his recent battle. That's the tone they set for the emperors. Now Mahona and I can't remember his name, Mahona and the chief of his like clan or tribe or wherever he was when they got attacked, they are shipped off with the other slaves that were taken. They're forced to fight rabid baboons in this. At this point, Mahona is so full of rage, he takes one of the baboons, he bites it, and then ends up killing it with his bare hands. This rage and this anger he has catches the attention of someone that's watching in the audience. The name of this person is Macrinus. If you saw the picture I just threw up, you know why I'm about to get excited. Macrinus is played by none other than Denzel freaking Washington. Strong point, strong point, strong point, strong point, strong point. Oh my gosh. Denzel acted his ass off in this scene, bruh. In this film, in this movie, he was acting his ass off. And actually, just as we're here now, acting in general in this film was amazing. So that's another strong point from the movie, of course. We get a lot of emotion. The chemistry was on point. I think the casting was fantastic for these characters. It didn't seem like anyone was out of place. They all knew what they were doing. They all came to deliver, quote unquote, by Denzel. And Paul Mescal is another one of them boys that I feel like he's gonna be rich. No joke. Like, he gonna be rich. Of course, this being Denzel's maybe possibly one of his last roles in Hollywood, I just think he's going out on top. And the performance he gave for this film, I truly believe he's gonna get another Oscar for this supporting role. Now, to speak a little bit about Macrinus himself, he is a wealthy figure. We're not exactly sure where he is from, but we can tell that he's a man of wealth, a man of stature, a man of importance. He tells Mahona that he plans on using that rage inside him to achieve his destiny. Macrinus promises him the head of Acacius, and Acacius being, of course, responsible for the death of Mahona's wife, Arashat. In return, Mahona will fight for him as a gladiator. Now, with Mahona under the thumb of Macrinus, with the promise of revenge, of course, we truly see how resilient of a character Mahona is. Mahona, he's forced to fight one of Macrinus's guards to really test him and see how tough he is, I guess. The guard's name is Vigo, I believe. Now, Vigo has some brass knuckles spike glove things on, and when I tell you he's letting off shots on this boy, and Mahona is just taking it, and he's even landing some of himself. That just shows how strong Mahona's character is. I think we got a great MC here. This is a fantastic main character. Now we go back to Rome here. We're at the home of Acacius. Now he's greeted there by his wife, who we find out is Lucilla Aurelius from the first movie, with Connie Nielsen, I believe her name is, reprising her role from the original. Another thing to point out here, real quick, there is a lot of homoerotic undertones in this movie, which is more or less accurate to like Roman and Greek history. It's just not something you see in historical movies, so I just wanted to point that out. If that does, if anyone does watch and that caught them off guard, so that's just them building to the authenticity of ancient Rome, so nothing to be surprised about there. And the reason why I say that is because Mahona is taken to some kind of gathering by Macrinus, where he's to fight another slave for the amusement of the twin emperors who are also there and viewing this. We can tell Mahona he's against needless violence, and he doesn't really want to fight the other slave. He even says, brother, let's not fight for their amusement. And when he's given a sword to kill the other slave, he tosses it to the side, but the other slave doesn't let up, and they keep fighting. Mahona does not want to fight him. Again, he's trying to defend himself, but as the fight goes on, he's getting more aggressive. The other slave is then killed by Mahona in defense. Geta, one of the emperors, is quite amused by Mahona. You can tell, again, that's that hatred he has for all Romans, the emperor being no different. He doesn't want anything to do with the emperors, right? And when the emperor, he asks him to speak, instead of giving him a name, he quotes a poem that I believe he was read to him as a child, is what he said later on in the movie. The gates of hell are open night and day, smooth the descent, and is easy the way. But to come back from hell and view the cheerful skies, in this the task and mighty labor lies. Now we go back to Acacius's home again, and we find out that Acacius, who is actually more noble of a soldier than we are led to believe by how they shot him in the beginning, he actually wants to overthrow the emperors and give the power back to the Senate, similar to how Marcus Aurelius dreamed of 16 years prior. Now the next scene, we are back in Rome. The emperors have reopened the Colosseum Games in honor of Acacius' recent victories, and that of course does mean gladiators. The emperors, of course, being there to watch and view. Just another strong point for how good they casted these two characters, right? The twin emperors are being played by Joseph Quinn and Fred Hetchinger. Joseph Quinn, of course, being famous from, I believe, Stranger Things and A Quiet Place, Day One. They casted these two emperors perfectly. It really helps that they show how quite disturbed these two emperors are. I also love the fact that we get original characters from the first movie played by their original actors. Of course, Lucilla being played by Connie Nielsen. Now we actually see that Mahona and the other gladiators Macrinus has enslaved, they're in the middle of the Colosseum now. We actually see that they're supposed to take on another gladiator who's riding a freaking rhino. What the heck? Now, Mahona actually does show us his combat IQ, and we see that he's got some moves on him, bruh. They actually fake us here with another potential callback to the original movie, where Mahona kneels on the Colosseum ground. He takes dirt, and we're thinking he's about to hit us with one of these, like how Maximus did in the first movie, right? Nope. He takes the dirt, and as the rhino is charging at him, he tosses the dirt up into the air, causing the rhino to not see where it's going, of course, and it runs headfirst into the Colosseum wall, thus incapacitating it. So I'm telling you, this boy, he's using his brain meats for real. So the rhino's rider now being forced to his feet. We also see a bit more from the combat scene when it comes to Mahona and his, again, his moves, because that boy's got some moves. They go back and forth for a little bit. The rider actually does get the upper hand here, knocks him to his ground, knocks his weapon loose. Mahona is on one knee, and the rider looks up to the emperors to, and he's waiting for them to like cast their final judgment. Now the crowd is actually chanting for mercy. They want to show mercy to Mahona. Our protagonists then being protected by this, I guess the emperors actually agree and they give the thumbs up. But Mahona actually denies their mercy, saying that he rather face your blade than accept a Roman's mercy. Again, there's that hatred he has for the Roman people, right? The fight continues. This time Mahona actually ends up taking the upper hand, and the crowd wants blood. With two swords now and the emperor's signal, the thumbs down, of course, Mahona then cuts off the rider's head and declaring victory for the slaves. Now, as we we are watching the game, we actually notice that Lucilla was also present there as well, and she sees Mahona, and she notices he's a little familiar, right? She visits him that night in his cell, recalling the story, or telling him, I should say rather, of how she saved her son, Lucius, after Maximus died. So immediately after Maximus's death, we see that in a flashback, knowing that Lucius was the next emperor in line and that the possible danger that resides with that. She actually sends Lucius off to in hiding in order to survive. And as she's telling him this story, she actually calls Mahona Lucius, asking if he remembers her. Now, if you didn't guess this from the trailers or anything else, I'm pretty sure they spoiled this fairly early into the promotion of this movie. Mahona is in fact her son Lucius that she had sent away, now 16 years older, in this prison cell fighting for his freedom. She also admits the truth that Maximus is actually Lucius's father, his true father, I should say. Lucius still harboring some disdain for how his mother sent him off when he was a kid, and I'm sure him finding out that Maximus is actually his father had something to do with his mixed up feelings right here. He tells Lucilla, your son is dead and you shouldn't be wasting your apologies. He screams at her, telling her to leave. So she returns home. She does confide in Acacius that Lucius, her son, is actually alive. And Acacius at this time also, he's working on a coup. He wants to overthrow the emperor. He has a plan, I believe. He wants to wait for his troops in Ostia. Lucilla actually, quite selfishly here, I'm not even gonna say selfishly, it's her son. She asks Acacius to actually break Lucius out so he doesn't end up dying in the Colosseum. Reluctantly, he accepts the offer, but again, he doesn't want to deal with this right now. He wants to overthrow the empire, and hopefully Lucius would survive the next couple of days, but she doesn't go for it. Lucilla then tells him, I have no problem sacrificing my life, but I will not sacrifice my son's life for Rome. Now, the next day, we do have a new game in the Colosseum, and this is gonna be a strong point of it and of itself, because this is a freaking water battle. I don't know what they were thinking throwing this into the movie, but it worked, right? Now, they flooded the Colosseum floor and they've infested the water with sharks, and they have two boats in the middle. The slaves, or the gladiators, they're referred to as barbarians here. The other boat, of course, is full of Roman praetorians, or the Roman guards. We get some more great cinematography. We get some more fantastic shots. The CGI again looks fantastic. Even the sharks look great. And now again, Lucius showing his intelligence and natural leadership, I should say. He's able to take the upper hand against the Romans. He actually does have some good strategy here, and he ends up rendering their boat immobile, and actual fight ensues. Just real quick here, Lucius, now again, this man hates Acacius. Like, he has some genuine disdain and hatred for Acacius. Understandable, because again, he is responsible for the murder of his wife. As chaotic as this scene is, Lucius does find a crossbow on the ground. He aims it at Acacius, and Acacius being in the viewer box, right? It's right in front of them. He has the shot, and due to the chaotic fight, he actually ends up missing and nearly hits one of the emperors. He didn't care. His mother was there. He didn't give a damn. He wanted Acacius dead. If an emperor or his mother were to, you know, be caught in the crossfire, the game's the game. He didn't give a fuck. I'm gonna be honest. My apologies for cussing. Now we're back with Macrinus, and we actually see a little bit more of Macrinus's true intentions here. He wants to know Mahona's true identity, right? Macrinus visits the home of one of the Senate members, who actually he's had some bets with along this movie. He bet that Mahona would beat the slave, and then he also bet that Mahona would win the water battle. Now, this senator's name is Thrax. Thrax is a wimpy little man. He now owes Macrinus 2 days in a row. He still hasn't, you know, paid off his debts. Macrinus then, in his own home, says, hey, I own this now, therefore I own you, which is just cold. He presses Thrax for information on Lucilla. Again, he's a rat. He's just trying to protect himself in any way possible. Thrax already knows about the plan to overthrow the emperor. He tells that to Macrinus. He says, hey, they're planning on a coup, and he tells Macrinus that also Lucilla has been hiding her son, and it's actually one of your gladiators. Now, in the next scene here, we actually do see that Acacius, again, keeping up on his promise, he plans on actually breaking out Lucius, and he has a squad of Roman soldiers with him. They're traveling through the city late at night. Given that just moments ago, we find out that this plan has been revealed to Macrinus. Acacius and his soldiers are then ambushed by the Praetorian guards. The leader, the reason why I bring him up is because he's played by Rory McCann, who played the Hound of Game of Thrones. So I just found that exciting. Me being a Game of Thrones fan, I love that. So Acacius's men are killed. He's captured. Now back in the Gladiator camp, I believe this is called, Lucius notices notices a wall of names of all the other gladiators, or people that have stepped in the gladiator ring, I should say. And he sees Maximus's Macrinus's name is actually scribbled out on the wall. Now, the doctor, who I believe his name is Ravi, takes Lucius to a kind of memorial for the other gladiators that have fallen in the Colosseum. And this section of the wall, we actually see it says Maximus's name, and on that wall is a familiar set of armor and a familiar sword. Just leaving that there. Now, Acacia's being captured. Again, they find out that Lucilla was part of this as well, so she's been taken prisoner also. They're taken to the emperors. They are quite angry, especially Caracalla. They want to make an example of Acacius and his wife, given that, of course, them being traitors to the crown. It is here we find out that Macrinus did in fact warn the emperors of the possible coup. This is all part of like another deeper plot that we don't really see yet. He's very manipulative, and he's trying to dig his hooks in deep. Again, the emperors are quite angry, and Caracalla, and quite enraged. He wants to gut the traitors himself. But Geta, the other emperor, states that it needs to be public, and they plan on crucifying these two. But Macrinus, again being the manipulator that he is, he mentions that Acacius, being the hero of Rome, he should fight in the Colosseum games. More or less just not be, executed as to how they would do thieves and murderers and stuff like that. The emperors do agree. They plan on having Acacius fight. We're in the Colosseum again. It's the next day of the Gladiator games. Acacius again forced to fight, and now he starts off in the middle of the Colosseum floor, and he's forced to fight, I believe, 4 or 5 Praetorian guards. This is sad because the Praetorian guards, they don't want to kill Acacius. They have great respect for him. He's still a hero of Rome. They plan on killing him regardless, I should say that. So he's not making it out of this alive. Real quick, just Pedro's performance here and his physicality showed a lot in this scene, and that's going to be a strong point in of itself. Again, the combat's been great, but what we see individually from some of these characters, I think was very, very fun. Very enjoyable just watching this alone. He takes on 4 or 5 guards like it's nothing, and I mean puts them away. Like, you can tell the skill difference here. Now that I think about it, have we seen Pedro Pascal like act in movies where he was this combative or physical, I should say? Like anything hand-to-hand, sword fighting? I don't know. I know we did see Denzel and Pedro Pascal fight in The Equalizer 2, which was a very good scene and a decent movie itself. But I don't know if Pedro has really had anything like any combat like that, aside from like gunfights, of course. But yeah, I think he did very well. For his age even, he did very well. So hats off to Pedro Pascal. His performance was very, very good here. Now, after he does kill the Praetorians, we see that his next opponent here is none other than Lucius, or Mahona. He marches out onto the sand, not knowing that Acacius actually does know the truth about him, and he wants to overthrow the empire. Acacius does not want to fight Lucius. He doesn't want to fight the child of his wife, right? So the two clash in what seems to be a duel to the death. Lucius is quite angry. He's enraged. He's so aggressive here. He wants to kill the person responsible for the death of his wife. Acacius is on the more defensive side. He doesn't want to fight Lucius. Acacius just stops the fight, throws his sword to the side, and no longer wishes to continue, and waits for the judgment from the emperors. Of course, the emperors want Acacius dead, so they give the signifying thumbs down. And showing how psychotic the twins are here, they're talking about how the gods have chosen you to be dead and all that. Again, shout out to the actors that play the twins. They're psychopaths, man. Acacius then says to Lucius, "Do what you must, but know that I truly loved your mother and I admired your father Maximus." So noticing Acacius' restraint, Lucius decides to show mercy, and he throws his swords down, refuses to execute him, right? To the emperor's displeasure here. The emperors have lined the entire Colosseum with archers, and they actually order the archers to aim onto Acacius and fire onto him. He is then riddled with arrows and falls to the ground dead. Lucius, not wanting him dead no longer, he's over the revenge thing. He actually then screams into the crowd, "Is this how Rome treats your heroes?" Implying that the emperors may not be as noble as they appear to be, which he'd be right about, of course. With that, the audience, or the crowds, begins to stir and they start protesting. Now, just gonna note this here. In the original movie, I believe his name is Proximo. Proximo told Maximus that it's one thing to win a fight, but you need to win the crowd. I think in this sequel, Lucius here wins the crowd, because they start rioting in the stands and stuff. And then actually that night, the Roman city has been littered with rioters. They want justice for Acacius, and the emperor is not knowing what to do here. They're panicking a little bit. Their subjects are, acting in disorder. They actually begin turning on each other a little bit, and they're snapping at each other. Macrinus taking the advantage here. He snaked his way into the company of these two. He takes advantage of all this strife and anger between the two, and when he's alone with Caracalla, he convinces Caracalla that his brother Geta plans to blame him for the death of Acacius and throw him into the fire, basically. And he wants Caracalla to take things into his own hands. Caracalla, this man is mentally weak, and as if he was under the spell of Macrinus, he attacks his brother with a knife almost immediately. Now, Gaeta, of course, not wanting to die as anyone would. Gaeta, fending off his brother, he actually pleads to Macrinus as he's trying to hold the knife back and not let it plunge into him, right? Macrinus, in aid of Caracalla here, he grabs Caracalla's hand, overpowers Gaeta, and uses the knife to slice open Gaeta's neck. And that's where the scene ends there. Now, the next morning, we're in the Senate. Caracalla being the only emperor present now, he appoints Macrinus to a seat of power in the Senate. Again, Macrinus's plan is just falling into place here, I'm sure. Macrinus then displays that he's actually cut off the head of Gaeta and pulls it out of a bag. That was such a great scene of itself. How he talks here. I need the power, and you're gonna give me the power. He's in a room full of senators, and he tells them, I will obtain the power that I'm looking for. There's nothing y'all can do about it. A psychopath, I'm telling you, he's truly a psychopath. But again, Denzel acted his ass off in this film. My gosh. Now we're at the end of the movie. So just a quick recap. Mahona, now Lucius. Macrinus has some ulterior motive in this whole thing. One of the emperors, Gaeta, has been killed, leaving Caracalla the sole emperor now. And Acacius is dead. And it seems like the plan to overthrow the emperor is over with. Now back in the Gladiator camp, Lucius is visited by Lucilla again. Lucius, of course, having a complete change of heart towards his mother, he apologized about what happened to Acacius, knowing that she might also end up dying a similar fate. His mother now gives him a ring that belonged to her father, Marcus Aurelius, and it also belonged to Maximus. And you can see that their two names, Marcus Aurelius and Maximus, are etched into the inside of the ring. Later that day, Macrinus visits Lucius in his cell also. Macrinus is confused as to why Lucius didn't kill Acacius, and Lucius replies to him that it's my choice if I want to take vengeance. And Macrinus then explains that it doesn't matter, and that he planned to use Lucius to achieve his destiny, stating that you will be my instrument. Lucius, of course, wanting no part of anything else now. I guess he's seen how like anger has taken him to where he is and stuff, and trying to let go of that, I guess. But he does vow that he will be the one that kills Macrinus, because I believe Macrinus did tell him that your mother's going to die. And I guess he just picked up that Macrinus is behind all this. Macrinus also does visit Lucilla here, and we find out that Macrinus was truly a soldier in Marcus Aurelius's army. I guess he tells Lucilla basically that you need to die so I can get to where I need to be. Now we go on to Lucilla's punishment from the emperors. Well, the emperors, now emperor I should say, has planned another public execution basically in the Colosseum. Macrinus has engineered this. Caracalla doesn't really get killing Lucilla, but Macrinus tells him that if Lucilla's alive, then the threat of you losing the throne will also be alive. So convinces him. Again, Caracalla's weak-minded individual. He's not the smartest. They plan on Lucilla being attacked by Praetorian guards in the middle of the Colosseum. And it's actually Lucilla who's also there with a bunch of the Senate members that were part of this as well, I should say. Now back to Lucius. He's now also being offered his freedom in the form of the wooden sword. I guess when you're given a wooden sword, you're then free. But he will only get that if he successfully defends his mother from the other Praetorians. But he's to fight this battle by himself. It's going to be just him protecting his mother. Oh, I actually forgot here. Lucius, before this was announced to him, he starts planning himself how he wants to foil Macrinus's plan. He remembers Acacius's army in Ostia, and he tells the doctor, again Ravi, to go to that camp, tell them that Acacius is dead, I think, and then give him this ring, and they'll know what to do, and I guess they'll show up and help or whatever. He actually says Ravi should tell them that Lucius, the Prince of Rome, has sent for them, and he also then is given the keys to his cells. Now, with the cells being unlocked, and I mean all the cells in the camp are unlocked, every gladiator is free. They bust out and they kill Macrinus's guard, Vigo, I believe his name is, and they plan to fight alongside Lucius, even though he's supposed to be just him out there by himself. Lucius then heads back to the wall commemorating his father Maximus, and he takes the sword and armor for himself before the battle, which I loved, by the way. Oh my gosh. Lucius goes back to his cell to prepare himself, I guess. He still actually has the arrow from when his wife was shot, and before leaving his cell, after he's donned on the new armor, he leaves the arrow behind and whispers, "Wait for me," as if speaking to his late wife, which I think is a nice touch. Lucius now is preparing the other gladiators for battle, again wearing his father's armor, and he's wielding even his sword. Lucius is a born leader. He's giving the gladiators a speech, and they are all for it. They are ready to die for this man. Lucius raises up his sword, and he exclaims a familiar saying, "For strength and honor," and it's followed by the other gladiators all willing to fight and die for this new cause. Lucius then walks into the middle of the Colosseum. He sees Lucilla, of course, and she's surrounded by the Praetorian guards, and it's a lot of guards, by the way. Like, this is such overkill. The emperor is watching up in the stands, who's of course joined by Macrinus. He believes that they're about to be killed by the Praetorians. Just before the guards are about to start closing in on Lucius and Lucilla. Lucius like raises his sword as if on command. The other gladiators burst through the gates and they join their newfound leader. So madness ensues. It's gladiator versus praetorian all throughout the Colosseum floor. We're gonna give another strong point to the combat here because I thought it was great. Macrinus and the lone emperor are watching Lucius fight amongst the crowd. Macrinus, he starts to show a little bit more worry here as his plan is like kind of falling apart, but he's trying to pull it together. He's trying to pull the plan together, I guess. As the fight continues, we actually see that some of the gladiators make it into the crowd and they are attacking the praetorians that are lining the crowd as well. And one of them even tries to attack Caracalla, but is end up, killed, of course. Macrinus now tries to use the chaos to his advantage. He takes a needle from his robe, and Caracalla, being distracted, again, he's a dummy. He's loving all this mindless nonsense. He doesn't even realize that the plan has fallen through to kill Lucilla. Macrinus drives a needle deep into his brain through his ear. Oh my gosh. And again, Macrinus is a psycho. He doesn't care who's in his way. If you're in his way, you're dead, basically, right? Lucius also tries to take advantage of the chaos here and then free his mother. The head Praetorian guard, again, Tugula, I believe his name is, he warns Macrinus that they've spotted Acacius' soldiers from Ostia approaching the city. Macrinus, he's like the new self-appointed emperor. He orders whatever guards are left to escort him out of the city in order to escape. Just after committing regicide, Macrinus picks up a bow and arrow from one of the fallen guards, takes aim, and as Lucius is struggling to remove Lucilla's chains, we just see an arrow sprout from her chest. Of course, ending the life of Lucius's mother, who he had just been reunited with. They did the OG characters kind of crazy. Lucius, of course, seeing that his mother was just killed by Macrinus and him quite angry, he notices that Macrinus is trying to leave. As he's fleeing, Macrinus gets on a horse. Lucius follows him on horseback. Now we are at the city limits, and we see that Acacius' soldiers from Ostia have now arrived, and they're at the beginning of the bridge into the city. Macrinus trying to cross the bridge, he's not able to get past, of course. He stopped dead in his tracks. Lucius actually then, catches up, of course, with his mother's killer. He's quite pissed, and Macrinus and Lucius fight for the last battle of the movie, I should say. Macrinus, being a fighter at one point, he's quite old, but Lucius at this point is drained, and he might even be injured at this point. So, of course, Macrinus, being the fresher fighter, he takes advantage early of the fight, knocking Lucius to the ground. Macrinus, even fighting a little dirty here, he throws some dirt into Lucius's eyes, knocks him into the river. They're struggling in the river now. Macrinus on the upper hand. He's trying to stab Lucius through his chest as they, of course, struggle in the water. But Maximus's armor that Lucius is now wearing, it seems to protect him, and the blows are just, bouncing off. Now, Lucius is in the underwater here, though. He's like completely submerged, and it's like he almost loses consciousness. As he does, we are actually back on that black and white beach, again mirroring the scene from the first movie where we see the fields while Maximus is trying to stay alive when he's fighting Commodus in the first movie. I don't remember exactly what is said here, but I believe you hear for strength and honor again. Lucius then wakes up, regains consciousness, I should say, and with a rock he picks up off the riverbed, he gets back on his feet, strikes Macrinus in the head, and Macrinus drops his weapon. Lucius then grabs the sword and quite swiftly turns around and cuts off Macrinus's arm. Now, Macrinus is showing some resolve here, because if I lose an arm like that, you gonna hear me scream, boy. That man just sat there. He's in pain, of course. He's making a face, but he's not showing no type of fear to Lucius as well. So my gosh. Just as quickly as he lost his arm, Lucius strikes Macrinus in the abdomen. He actually then disembowels Macrinus, and Macrinus dies floating down the river. That's the end of his character. An end to a stellar performance, I might add. Oh my gosh. The soldiers from Ostia and the Praetorians have been watching all this, and it's like thousands of people on either side. Lucius walks onto the shore, of course him being the victor, but this man is tired. You can tell he's exhausted from these last couple of days. He throws the sword to the side. He says there's no need for anyone else to die. He's talking to both soldiers now, because it seems like they're maybe about a fight. He then tells everyone that he is Lucius Aurelius, the Prince of Rome, son of Lucilla and Maximus. And he actually persuades the Praetorians that the Senate should hold the power and that we shouldn't have an empire. It should be a Senate republic. And that actually does seem to work. The Praetorians, understanding that I guess the emperors weren't too kind, or the empire in of itself was more tyranny than anything, they agree. Everyone sheaves their swords. I guess that's the end of that strife. I know I'm not saying everything Lucius said, but I don't remember all he said. But I know he was talking to the soldiers. He is quite convincing, and they decide that it's not worth fighting right now. We should worry about the people, given that both the emperors are dead. We actually do end the movie here in the Colosseum. Again, it's late morning. Lucius kneels on the ground, and he's asking for guidance from his father. Speak to me, father. Before the credits do roll, we again see Maximus's hand as he's walking through the fields, and we're not sure really whether or not Rome is going to go through a Senate or they appoint another emperor. And that's actually where the movie ends. I mean, just like in the first movie, they don't really tell us what happens with the Senate thing, and then the second movie they do the same thing where we're not really given a true historic ending, and we don't really see what happens to Rome. I guess they're planning on doing a Gladiator 3. I don't think we need it, but to be fair, I didn't think we need a Gladiator 2, and you know, if it's really Scott again, I'm all for it. That's gonna get a big boom on the boom meter for me. I'm sorry, I've been recording for a little bit too long. Now, quickly before I end this video, of course, just give my overall rating of the film. We're gonna start off with the writing and the story of the film. I'm gonna give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. Of course, it being a sequel, it's not surprising that the movies are a bit similar, of course, but I do think they gave the unique spin on this movie and were able to distinguish our two main characters, Lucius and Maximus, although their stories have a lot of similarities. Next, let's see the sound design and the score. I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10. The sound design was phenomenal. Again, the score is good, but it's not very memorable, but where the score did fall, the sound design picked up, and I think it was very immersive. We're pulled into ancient Rome very easily through the audio of the movie, and you can't ask for more than that. Now on to the acting of the film. As good as I've hyped up this acting, I'm gonna give it a 9.5. It would have been a 10, but we really don't see much from Pedro Pascal's character, which I thought was surprising. Most likely that just being a director's or an artistic choice, being that it's not Pedro or Acacius' story, of course, but the powerhouse of an actor Pedro Pascal is, I would have loved to see more out of him as a character in this movie. Denzel and Paul Mescal blew my expectation out the water. Now, to speak about the cinematography, I'm gonna give the cinematography in this movie a 9 out of 10. Very good camera work with, again, some amazing shots throughout the entirety of the movie that build into the story and they give a lot of emotion just from the cameras. Like, there's literally one scene in the movie though, it wasn't the easiest to follow, but I think they made up for it overall in general with the movie in a big way. Overall, this movie, Gladiator 2, I'm going to give this a... Damn, my hands are dry. I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. This being one of the best action adventure movies I've seen in a long time. It was very much worth the wait, of course. Again, kudos to Ridley Scott. Kudos to the writers, Peter Craig and David Scarpna, for the fantastic story that we've been given and the picture that we've seen as well. But yeah, that was the Gladiator 2 review. I'm gonna shut up about this movie now. I'm so grateful to experience this movie in theaters. You just get it. It's a different feeling watching a movie on the big screen. But that's gonna be it for me from here. If you did enjoy the video, if you could toss me one of them likes, I truly do appreciate them. They don't go without notice. I will catch y'all in the next video. Now that I think about it, what's the next review we're gonna do? It's probably gonna be Nosferatu. That comes out in about 3 weeks. No, like 4 weeks, I should say. Happy Thanksgiving if I don't see y'all. I probably will, but I don't kind of feel 100%. I'm getting over a cold now, so apologies for this being so late. Without further ado, I'm gonna bid y'all good night, better morning, all that ish, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. God bless. I'm out.